Hey there. So it looks like our friend Jon Stewart is back in the news, and he's pressing hard the Biden administration to get some veterans some extra benefits that came out in the PACT Act a couple of years ago. It seems as if, in the military's infinite wisdom, shortly after 9/11, there was an old, abandoned or rundown base, airstrip, if you will, in Uzbekistan, and that place reportedly was used to launch air strikes into Afghanistan in the early days of the war. Well, what never came to light until a few days ago was that that place was riddled with enriched uranium, depleted uranium. It was a place where they put together missiles, did some nuclear testing, and so it was just contaminated, right? And so the United States military sent a team there to check out the place. Once local workers, there were local workers there that were trying to secure the area, prep the area for the U.S. military to come in, and then turn that place into a U.S. controlled base territory, and that's where they would house the planes and everything else that would be used to launch airstrikes. And so I was reading through this article, and here's what I don't understand. You send a team of scientists, basically. Environmental experts probably is a more appropriate term for what they do. You send them into an area to make sure that the air and the ground and the water is safe for people to live there, because we are going to send plane loads of people to live there, to work, pilots to fly, and everything in between. And when they get there, they find that there's contamination everywhere. And even though this is found, unless I was confused about the timeline explained in the article, in the story, they get there and they find all of this stuff on the ground. In fact, Jon Stewart said, I got the article pulled up here. Imagine you're stationed inside a meth lab on Breaking Bad. Now, you're going to be surprised by this, but I've never watched the show Breaking Bad, so I'm not quite sure what that is like, but I have seen a meth lab. For those of you who don't know, I was a bounty hunter for 16 years, and we walked into and saw a whole lot of things that were very unfortunate, I guess you could say. And meth labs were certainly on that list, especially in northern Minnesota. But it goes down to talk about how they would like to get these veterans who were affected by the contamination at what they called K2. Let's see if they have in here. Special Operations Forces deployed to Karshi Kanabad. I might be butchering that. Otherwise known as K2 in Uzbekistan, about 3 weeks after the 2001 attacks, is when these special operations people were deployed there. K2 is a former Soviet air base that U.S. forces used to strike Taliban targets inside Afghanistan in the early days of the war. Side note, it sounds really weird to me, and maybe this is a sign of my age, to refer to anything that I was involved with as the early stages of the war. I feel like when you watch World War II in color, they talk about, well, in the early stages of the war back in 1942, it's a sign of getting older, clearly. And it kind of gets you a little more than you think it will. At least it does for me anyway. And then I got to see this patch of gray that is on my face every day. Anyway, so in their infinite wisdom, they send this forward team there. The special operations team was comprised of environmental experts or people. And in this article, they talk about what it is that they found. And it's absolutely astonishing to me that in all their infinite wisdom, that they still found people to go there, or they still ordered people to go to this place after they found all this contamination. And they did their job, kind of, right? They found this contamination. They started cordoning off the area, and then they were going to build a berm or something like that to kind of cordon it off and keep people out of it. But what they don't talk about is the dust, right? If you're going to build a berm or a huge dirt pile, you got to get the dirt. And in the middle of the desert, there's dirt everywhere. And so they just started running bulldozers. They started running bulldozers back and forth to move the earth there. Now, these people work for the Special Operations Command. The Special Operations Command is supposed to be comprised of the best of the best as it relates to the United States Army. And I suppose all the other, it's the Green Berets, right? So that anybody from any branch of service can try out and be a Green Beret. Just like anybody from any branch of service can go to BUDS training and try out and have them almost kill you to see if your balls are big enough to be a Navy SEAL. And it's that hard for a reason. It's supposed to be that hard. Because after all, when and if these people get into a situation, they are literally the tip of the spear. Do they have help? Yeah, they probably do. Is it close? Maybe. Maybe the help is close. So these are supposed to be the people who are top of the top. Pass all the tests, both physical and mental tests, tactical proficiency, testing. There's all kinds of things that one has to go to in order to be able to wear this uniform. And they still sent people there. Here it says in the article, even if it were in the least radioactive form, so all these things that they found on the ground. So they talk about little clusters of yellow powder and little dots of yellow powder everywhere, and that there's dust. There's dust going on all over the place. And so this uranium and these chemicals are all in powder form. So they must have been like making all of these warheads and then connecting them to missiles or something like that. And when the Soviet Union fell, they just abandoned ship. And from what they described, this whole place was kind of ransacked. So maybe somebody went through it and ransacked it and started feeling ill, and they were out of there. But the point is that there's powder everywhere. So it says here, even if it was in its least radioactive form, let me get it on the form. Even if it were in its least radioactive form, depleted uranium, the soil was up to 24,000 times above what would have been found in nature. Air samples were more than 30 to 100 times the levels of what would have been found in normal air samples. And this, I didn't even try that name. This is the guy who's supposed to be the expert that's analyzing all this data. The radiation levels the health team recorded were significant enough that anyone not wearing protective gear would have breathed in high levels of contamination when the dust was kicked up, especially during activities such as earth moving. So, the PACT Act comes out 2 years ago. Keep in mind that the activities at K2 were 3 weeks after the 9/11 attacks on our country. Okay. So 2 years ago now, fast forward to 2022, late 2021, early 22. The PACT Act is passed. This includes the veterans of our era, so Iraq, Afghanistan. This includes Desert Storm veterans. This includes Vietnam veterans, and everything in between. And so on this list of presumptive conditions are all kinds of cancers. There's all kinds of respiratory conditions. There's just a whole litany of things. If you were in the service and in these places and you have this condition off this list of many, there is no further investigation on your condition needed. So let's just say, for conversation's sake, it's diabetes. If you were in the service, you're a Vietnam veteran, you were exposed to Agent Orange, you now have diabetes. The VA says, under the PACT Act, you qualify for compensation because it is presumed, it's presumptive, that your diabetes came from your exposure to Agent Orange. Great. Not great that you have Agent Orange exposure and that you have diabetes and who knows what else going on in your body. But great that they've now identified it and people are now getting coverage. There is nothing in the PACT Act, however, that would cover any of the conditions that any of these veterans who were at K2 are now experiencing and have been experiencing for quite some time. And I think that what Jon Stewart is trying to pressure the president about is that these things, these people, there isn't a ton of them. There isn't a lot. It's not like, Operation Iraqi Freedom veterans where there's a lot. These veterans who were at this place, who are suffering from these things because of their exposure to enriched and depleted uranium, should be taken care of. And so I agree 1,000%. I agree 1,000%. And I struggle with understanding why there's any question to that. And at first I thought, well, okay, there's probably some question to that because they're thinking about money. They're thinking about the cost. They're thinking about how many more veterans do we need to grant not only disability payments to, but care, medication, any kind of assistive devices, like canes or walkers or prosthetics. They call all of that prosthetics. Any kind of gear to assist you in getting around or making your life easier or keeping you as independent as possible. They're thinking about all of that, I think. Because I can't come up with any other reason why the VA wouldn't just say, oh, okay, well, thank you for bringing this to our attention, assuming that they didn't already know about it. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Certainly, we should lump them in. We sent people there to make sure it was safe. The people who went there said, it's not totally safe. At least that's the way I understood the article. It's not totally safe. And then the Pentagon, somebody in the Pentagon said, okay, well, let's build a berm, and then we'll send people there anyway. We need that space. We need that land. We need that area. We need that base to launch these strategic strikes against our enemies. And so there becomes the conundrum, right? And it shouldn't even be a conundrum, but it seems as it is. Anybody with any kind of common sense would probably say, well, there is no conundrum. You just don't send soldiers there. We got to find a different spot. Maybe we got to find a field in the middle of nowhere and send the sappers in and the pathfinders and have them create us a landing strip, an airstrip. And then we're going to have to construct tents. And then once that's constructed and we've started our mission, we can bring in more things, more permanent structures, and we can build a base over time. But this place was already built for the most part. It's already established, but now we're putting our soldiers and our pilots and our support staff and whoever else, we're putting them there to be exposed. And it seems, though, as though the powers that be didn't think anything about how moving the earth might spread contamination of a powder. And I don't know, guys. I'm not a very smart man. I've got no PhD or no master's degree. But it would seem to me that if somebody who is an environmental expert came to me and said, hey, I don't think you should go let your kids play at that park because there's some weird stuff on the ground. Our tools are dinging and clicking off the hook. There's something wrong. And I was like, okay, thanks for letting me know. Hey guys, go to the park, but stay off the swings. Everything else is okay. And then my kids get sick and I don't understand why. It seems like that's kind of what happened. And so now we're at this place in our country where there's so many questions about the common sense in our elected officials and our government leaders. It just seems like it's one after the other, after the other, after the other. Nobody's got any answers for anything. Nobody has taken responsibility for anything. Everyone likes to pass the buck. It's never anyone's fault. And everyone wants to refer you to the next person or the next office or the next department. And then articles like this come out and we can see that this has been going on for years. Who knows how many of these type of incidents have happened since this or even before this? If you've paid attention at all to what's going on in our country in this week, the lady, what's her name, stepped down from the Secret Service, the director. She stepped down last week. Now there's some interim guy in there. He was getting punched in the chest by this Senate committee. I think it was on Tuesday. And nobody had any answers. Nobody wanted to answer any questions. And nobody wanted to take any ownership. I think the only general consensus in the whole hearing, and I think it went over 3 hours, was that this was a catastrophic failure. Well, we learned that from the other lady that stepped down. We learned that it was a failure. In fact, we all saw that it was a failure as it was happening. And as the minutes went by that Saturday afternoon, we learned how even more catastrophic of a failure this was. And we're still learning how incompetent these people are. And these are the people that are charged with the responsibility of taking care of our leaders. And we've talked about it. We've talked about it so many times. Jason and I talked about it last week. I talked about it last week on the Richard Leonard Show over on Rumble. We talk about it all the time. I think it was Senator Hawley had asked this interim director of the Secret Service one simple question. Why was there not anybody on the roof that the assassin shot from? It's very simple. The only answer that the guy could give was that this is an ongoing investigation. And when we have all the information, we will certainly let you know. Now, you're talking to a committee of United States senators, which I understand to a lot of people nowadays doesn't seem like it matters at all. It doesn't seem like it doesn't nobody gives a shit that you're a United States senator. But you are under oath. And as the interim director of the Secret Service, it should mean something to you that you're talking to a committee of United States senators. Your testimony is being recorded and put out to the universe for anybody to see. And nobody has an answer to that question. It's always, well, this was a catastrophic failure. When we have more answers, we'll give them to you. And so let me be clear. I understand that investigations take time. I understand that there is a lot of information that comes very, very, very later. Way after the fact. I get it. But some of these questions are extremely easy. Why was there nobody on that roof? The answers that we have heard was it's an ongoing investigation. It wasn't the Secret Service's post. It was the local yokels post. Man, we've heard that there was somebody on that roof. Nobody knows what happened to the officers that were supposed to be up there. The other answer we heard was that the police were inside the building, which is the most ridiculous one, right? The guy who's shooting at the head of a president shoots him in the ear is 8 feet above you on a tin roof. And you're supposed to be in that position, apparently inside the building was your post. You're supposed to be scanning and looking for threats to the man who's on the stage. And then they asked the guy, was it true that this assassin was identified as a suspicious person before he got on the roof? Yes, 57 minutes before or something like that. Okay? And then nobody could find him, but yet he was that suspicious that police officers all over the area were scrambling around to try to find this guy. And Donald Trump was still allowed to take the stage. And they asked the guy, whose decision is that? Well, I'm not quite sure. Not quite sure. This is an ongoing investigation. When we have all the information, we'll let you know. Dodging the question again. Okay? Now, Donald Trump's on the stage. Officers still can't find the security threat. Why was the decision not made to tell the ex-president, gotta go, time to get out of here, and allow him to continue speaking. Well, I don't really have the answer to that. This is an ongoing investigation, but please know that when we have all of the information, we will certainly get you everything you're asking for. Post haste. We're coming up on 2 weeks. 2 weeks since this happened. No, we're coming up on 3 weeks. Anyway, we're coming up on a lot of days since this happened. And nobody has any answers at all to any question. And these folks know, as we discussed last week, these folks know all they got to do is dodge these questions for 5 minutes at a time. And then the senator's time is up, and then they have to yield their time back to the chair. So now, no questions are answered. The senator spent his 5 minutes arguing with you, trying to get an answer out, and never submitted verbally a formal request for his question to be answered in writing. Now, I'm sure that there's some avenue to take to make these requests in writing after the fact, but nobody wants to take any accountability, is the point. So I went way, again, as usual, way around the block to go across the street. These miscalculations, these fumbles, these lapses in judgment, these spurts of complete and utter stupidity are proving to be more and more frequent than we've ever imagined. And here we are, still talking about who we're gonna vote in next. We're not having any conversations about who the hell should just be out, no matter who's going to be voted in, who should be barred from running again. You see, part of the problem here, I think, is that all of these elected officials have become so comfortable, complacent, if you will. They know that no matter what they do, there's a way for them to duck and dodge the law. There's a way for them to duck and dodge policy and anything that requires them to be accountable. They're able to completely skirt around it. And in the few instances where they maybe have been close to being called out or exposed or whatever you want to call it, then shit turns upside down. You ever find that weird? Nothing ever really gets solved. Nothing ever really gets handled. No questions are ever really answered. But yet, we continue to put the same people back in office. And I think part of the reason is that a lot of people in this country they're just ignorant to what really might be going on behind the scenes. And I don't claim to be an expert. I don't claim to know what's going on exactly. But sometimes things kind of just line up a little too well. Sometimes it's all just a little too convenient. And if anything, the last few years in the United States of America has started to open my eyes to is this theory that there isn't really any such thing as coincidence. Not when it comes to our government and political stuff. You ever notice that when one of these deep staters or one of the swamp trolls or whatever people want to call them, whenever someone gets close to being exposed, some other tragedy happens. Where's the information on Hunter Biden? Is Hunter Biden going to prison? Wasn't there proof through his trial and other testimony during his trial or trials? Wasn't there evidence to prove that the President of the United States was complicit in using his position of power and his name for profit? We didn't hear anything about that. We heard it for a day or two. And then something else goes wrong. And we focus on that. Well, let me ask you this. Here it is, the beginning of August. The leading candidate for the Republican Party for the Oval Office was just recently shot. Got winged in the ear. What are they redirecting our attention from? Because now everything you see is about these committees and these hearings, figuring out what really happened the day that Donald Trump's ear got shot. And I agree that we need to know, we need to find out. These questions need to be asked. But is that all that's happening in our country? Is that all that's going on? If you scan your stuff, you see a lot of Olympics. And you see a lot of things about this assassination attempt. And I think, folks, that we're going to learn that there were other hands in on this assassination attempt. But what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of things that a lot of people in this country really need. There's a lot of places where we need strong leadership. There's a lot of folks suffering. And a lot of people believe that their delegation from federal down to their city level is all very important. And my one question to them is it? Is it really important? Are any of them doing anything to make your life easier or better? But one thing that you can count on tomorrow is that you're going to see some new theory about the assassination attempt. You're going to see a medal count. You're going to see some local stories that are going to be all negative. I don't know where we find positive, uplifting stuff any longer. But anyway, we're running short on time, and I feel like I'm starting to talk in a circle. The point is this. The United States of America needed a strategic stronghold in a place to be able to effectively combat our enemies. And they found it. And when they found it, it was proved to not be safe for our people to be. living there, let alone working there, but living there, eating there, sleeping there, working out there, living there. And they were sent anyway. Now, either somebody didn't fill out the paperwork correctly, didn't speak up, or somebody just didn't care, because the geographical location of said airstrip was way more important than the lives of anybody you're going to send there. If it's true that they had all the data, which I believe that they did. Why would a person whose whole job is to make sure that the area is safe for soldiers to be go into a place after our country was just attacked 3 weeks prior? Why would somebody on our side wearing a uniform of the United States military go into a place and lie about how horrible this place is for humans to be? So let's just get that conspiracy theory out of the way. We had never been more connected. We'd never been more together than we were after 9/11. But whether you like them or you hate them or you don't care either way, I applaud Jon Stewart on this one. I believe that those veterans need to be entered into the PACT Act. Many of them may qualify already for other conditions, but these specific conditions, being exposed to depleted uranium, enriched in radium, and many other toxic chemicals. And you better believe they had a burn pit there, just like everyone else did. So they got that going on too. How much of these chemicals got burned and now are just smoke filling the air also? The VA needs to do the right thing. President Biden, if he can even keep from crapping his pants any longer, needs to do the right thing. Whoever comes next needs to do the right thing. These men and women, as usual, as we talk about on this show, these men and women sacrificed everything for this country. So I believe that Jon Stewart is right, and these individuals should be granted access to the same benefits under the PACT Act as anybody else who's qualified. It's similar to the Vietnam veterans being allowed in the PACT Act for Agent Orange exposure. This is a similar deal. Take care of them. You broke them. You're killing them. Take care of them. It's that simple. Good night.